According to the protocols and the writings of the Illuminati, both which came from Dr. Adam Weishaupt and has been added to over the last couple of decades and centuries, a 7-part plan was devised to create what they would call a new world order. It was Weishaupt himself now who came up with the 7-part plan, and it was he himself who came up with the term Novus Ordo Seclorum, or from the Latin, which means New World Order. Now, going with the very first part of the Illuminati plan, it calls for the abolition of all ordered government. Here is what the protocols have to say on how they're going to abolish all ordered governments and what they believe about these things. Political freedom is an idea, but not a fact. This idea one must know how to apply whenever it appears necessary with this bait of an idea to attract the masses of the people to one's party for the purpose of crushing another who is in authority. In other words, what they're doing, they've got a 2-party system going in which they constantly will have one look like the bad guy and the good guy side will always fight them. And then somehow miraculously this side now becomes the bad guy, and this side, who was the bad guys, now the good guys fighting against them. Now does this sound familiar? Especially with our own Senate and everything else that goes up there on Capitol Hill. Does any of this sound familiar? Moving on along, it says, whether a state exhausts itself in its own convulsions, whether its internal discord brings it under the power of external foes, in any case it can be accounted irretrievably lost. It is in our power. In any state in which there is a bad organization of authority, an impersonality of laws and of the rules, and of the rulers who have lost their personality amid the flood of rights ever multiplying out of liberalism, I find a new right, to attack by the right of the strong and to scatter to the winds all existing forces of order and regulation, to reconstruct all institutions, and to become the sovereign lord of those who have left to us the rights of their power by laying them down voluntarily in their liberalism. And tell me if this one doesn't sound familiar. The constitution scales of those days will shortly break down, for we have established them with a certain lack of accurate balance in order that they may oscillate incessantly until they wear through the pivot on which they turn. In other words, the Constitution has been designed and set up in such a way that they would be able to bring it down. And that's exactly what we see nowadays. My question would be, do we even have a Constitution anymore? Because if we do, I tell you, none of those judges are certainly going by it. When we introduce into the state organism the poison of liberalism, its whole political complexion underwent a change. States have been sealed with a mortal illness, blood poisoning. All that remains is to await the end of their death agony. Speaking of the Antichrist, now you have to understand, the Illuminati is not going to call him the Antichrist. As I stated before, they refer to him as the king of the despots. Now, speaking of this man, he will have the right, and just like the presidents, mind you, he will have the right to propose temporary laws and even new departures in the government constitutional working, the pretext both for the one and the other being the requirements for the supreme welfare of the states. In other words, they're doing this for our own good. Okay. Here's another one that's supposed to be for our own good. Useless changes of forms of government to which we instigated the Goyim. Now remember, that's one of the coded words, which means the chattel, people like you and me who are not members of the Illuminati. Useless changes of forms of government to which we instigated the channel when we were undermining their state structure will have so wearied the peoples by that time that they will prefer to suffer anything under us rather than run the risk of enduring again all the agitations and miseries they have gone through. And isn't that what they were also saying about that war that they would cause with Islam and Israel? That they would wear the people down to all this. And again, their own protocols state that this is what they're going to do. They're going to wear us down to such a state that we will accept peace at any price. While preaching liberalism to the chattel, we at the same time keep our own people and our agents in a state of unquestioning submission. Our power in the present tottering condition of all forms of power will be more invincible than any other because it will remain invisible until the moment when it has gained such strength that no cunning can any longer undermine it. Why do you think we call it the invisible government, ladies and gentlemen? It's right here. It always has been. But remember, according to these so-called intellectuals, all this can't possibly be correct. Yet, we see this happening all the time. This, then, is the program of the new Constitution. And I've told people in the past, I don't know how many times, the Illuminati already have a new Constitution waiting to implement when the time is right. And I don't see that too many years down the road from now. We shall make law, right, and justice, number one, in the guise of proposals to the legislative cause. Two, by decrees of the President under the guise of general regulations, of orders of the Senate, and of resolutions of the State Council in the guise of ministerial orders. And three, and in case a suitable occasion should arise, in the form of a revolution in the state. So how do they plan to abolish all loaded government? Through party dissension, liberalism, and an imbalanced constitution. Why? So that a new constitution may replace the old one. Now, the second part calls for the abolition of all private property. How do they plan to do this? We shall create by all the secret subterranean methods open to us, and with the aid of gold, which is all in our hands, a universal economic crisis whereby we shall throw upon the streets whole mobs of workers simultaneously in all the countries of Europe. These mobs will rush delightedly to shed the blood of those whom, in the simplicity of their ignorance, they have envied from their cradles, and whose property they will then be able to loot. Folks, isn't this called a depression? Historically speaking, the greatest depression that has ever happened was the one on October 29, 1929. Literally speaking, billions and billions and billions of dollars was lost that day. And if you notice, it's stated here that they would cause it in Europe. These matters would also eventually come into America, and historically speaking, we've had 6 depressions, 6 major ones. One of the last ones, as I just stated, would have been October 29, 1929. But, let's continue. The protocols continue to go on to say, it is essential, therefore, for us, at whatever cost, to deprive them of their land. This object will be best attained by increasing the burdens upon landed property and loading lands with debts. These measures will check landholding and keep it in a state of humble and unconditional submission. You see, this is what's interesting, folks. You know, most people who have a house and maybe own a couple of acres of land on it, they actually think they own it. They think they own that piece of God's earth. That is the biggest joke I have ever heard, and it's a sad joke at that. Because the fact of the matter is, if you don't pay your land taxes, your property's gone. So it can't be yours outright to begin with. It never will be yours. No matter what happens, you have to pay your land taxes every 6 months or every year. And if you don't pay it, guess who's going to come and take it? Plus, if you leave that, let's say, as an inheritance to your son or your daughter, well, guess what? The same thing's going to happen to them. It doesn't end. It becomes a vicious cycle. Because if they don't pay an inheritance tax for that property, it's going to be taken away. Now, if they pay the inheritance tax, they end up with paying a yearly tax or a bi-yearly tax, and if they don't, the property is still taken away. So you see, no one owns that land outright unless it's the government and the powers that be. The protocols go on to say this about the abolition of all private property. The rich must be aware that it is their duty to place a part of their superfluities at the disposal of the state, since the state guarantees them security of possession of the rest of their property and the right of honest gain. I say honest, for the control of a property will do away with robbery on a legal basis. Therefore, we must not stop at bribery, deceit, and treachery when they should serve towards the attainment of our end. In politics, one must know how to seize the property of others without hesitation if by it we secure submission and sovereignty. So, going by the protocols, how are they going to abolish all private property? Through bribery, deceit, treachery, and economic crisis. Why? To secure submission and sovereignty over you and I. The third one, the abolition of all inheritance. Purchase, receipt of money, or inheritance will be subject to the payment of a stamped progressive tax. Any transfer of property, whether money or other, without evidence of payment of this tax, which will be strictly registered by names, will render the former holder liable to pay interest on the tax from the moment of transfer of these sums up to the discovery of his evasion of declaration of the transfer. Oh my goodness. Doesn't this sound like the IRS? They will hunt you down until they get every penny out of you that they feel they rightfully have coming to them. Just strike an estimate of how many times such taxes as these will cover the revenue of the Goyim states, or the chattel state as it should be translated. This is exactly why they're going to abolish all inheritance. How they're doing this? Through unfair high burden of taxes. And they're doing this, they clearly said, to take away our revenue. See, it was in 1838, Meyer Amschel Rothschild, who was the head of the Illuminati at that time, made a very, very profound statement. He said, "Allow me to issue and control the money of a nation, and I care not who writes its laws." And he was right. Whoever pulls the purse strings makes the law. And that's what they're stating here, to take away our revenue. Now the fourth step towards their 7-part plan of creating a new world order calls for the abolition of all patriotism. Listen to how they plan to do this. It is with this object in view that we are constantly, by means of our press, arousing a blind confidence in these theories, which our agents specialists have cunningly pieced together for the purpose of educating their minds in the directions we want. Do not suppose for a moment that these statements are empty words. Think carefully of the successes we arranged for Darwinism, Marxism, Nietzscheism. Now think about this. They themselves claim that they're the ones who arranged for the successes of Charles Darwin, Marxism, and Nietzscheism. If this was some sort of Jewish Zionist conspiracy, how could these people, who God himself said he would not allow them to have any power in their hands, how could they have possibly done and brought Charles Darwin, the teachings of Marxism and Nietzscheism to the world? How could they have done it? They don't have the power to it. And why would they especially want to bring the theory of evolution when it's not within their belief system? Why would they bring communism? It's definitely not in their belief system. And let's face it, Nietzscheism is anything but related to Judaism. So we can see right now that this has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. Therefore, it could not be some sort of Jewish Zionist conspiracy. These people just don't have the power to do it. However, the Illuminati does. These continue to prove that these can be only and only Illuminati documents, not some type of Jewish, anti-Semitic, or Zionist conspiracy. Going back to the abolition of patriotism. We appear on the scene as alleged saviors of the workers from this oppression when we propose to him to enter the ranks of our fighting forces, socialists, anarchists, communists, to whom we give support in accordance with an alleged brotherly rule of the solidarity of our humanity. How is it? They plan to abolish all patriotism? Well, their own writings state, by the introduction of Marxism, Darwinism, and Nietzscheism. Why? Because these doctrines would lead to the destruction of the chattel. And let's face it, until 9/11, patriotism had been taking a beating. I remember when I was a young boy, and there'd be a parade downtown, and Old Glory would be brought by. Men would be taking off their hats. I saw women crying. Children were dead silent as the flag, which represented Americana, was going by. But now, we have made it constitutional where people can burn the flag in an act known as freedom of expression. Well, I'll tell you right now, those people better not burn Old Glory on my lawn or on my property, because I'm going to give them my expression and what I'm going to do as a result that they will never forget. I am for Americana, and I'm for what I have always believed to be the heart and soul of Americana. Unfortunately, it's been taking a beating. But this is part of the Illuminati's plan. The fifth part of the seven-part plan for the creation of a new world order calls for the abolition of all religion. What do the protocols have to say about the abolition of religions? Here is what they say. When we come into our kingdom, it will be undesirable for us that there should exist any other religion than ours of the one God, with whom our destiny is bound up by our position as the chosen people, and through whom our destiny is united with the destinies of the world. We must therefore sweep away all other forms of belief. This one, as far as I'm concerned, says it all. It's just 5 simple words, but it is so profound. It says, time was when faith ruled. It was so true. When the Puritans first came here into America, they settled up and established Christianity here in America. They really were a people who wanted Christianity to flourish in this new land. They believed in God with all their hearts, their mind, their soul, their body. However, once the Illuminati managed to sink their clutches into America, religion has been, as far as true Christianity, has been under never-ending, ceaseless attacks. We've had so many historical figures whom we believe were Christians, who we like to attribute, historically speaking, were well grounded in the Christian faith, in the beliefs and the doctrines and dogmas of Christianity. But as my dear brother and my good friend Chris Pinto is going to prove in a very new and exciting DVD, he's going to demonstrate something that is going to shock you folks to the literal core of your Christian belief. He's going to prove that everything we believed about our early forefathers, as far as them being solid Christians, them being the authors of Christianity in America, and so many other things, he is going to blow those notions completely out of the water. And I've already had many discussions with him about this new film of his coming, and I'm excited. I can't wait for it to come out because I know this is going to cause a firestorm. When I say a firestorm, I am expecting, and I've jokingly said this to Chris, I'm expecting them to take him down to the village square and offering him up as some type of, as a sacrifice to some type of pagan god. This is how much of a controversy this new information is going to bring about. But I'll tell you right now, it's Chris Pinto, it's documented, it's solid. You have got to get this one, ladies and gentlemen. I am absolutely excited about it. Look for this because Cutting Edge Ministries is going to be selling this one soon. I am personally, as I said, very, very excited to see this one come out. Now, continuing with what the protocols have said about religion, let's go on with this. It is with this object in view that we are constantly, by means of our press, arising a blind confidence in these theories. You see, the Illuminati has purposely been putting out, through these so-called intellectuals, all these wonderful theories and arguments that will do anything but build your Christianity and your faith in Christ. Remember, they've already claimed that they're the ones who made sure that the theory of evolution through Charles Darwin, or Darwinism, would succeed, and Darwinism completely negates God out of the formula. Marxism, which is based on communism, let's face it, they're a godless society, and Nietzscheism, he believes man eventually could become a god unto himself. Going on, it says, we have long past taken care to discredit the priesthood of the chattel and thereby to ruin their mission on earth, which in these days might still be a great hindrance to us. Day by day, its influence on the people of the world is falling lower. Now, what was the mission we were given to fulfill on the earth? To bring the message of Christ and His Word throughout all the world, and to make these people, and to save these people. Our message, our mission is one of salvation. And yet, to this very day, I hear more and more excuses from I don't know how many different type of Christians why they're not witnessing. You know? And this was the Great Commission. We are supposed to go out there and make believers of all men. And the Illuminati, in their own words right now just stated, we can still be a hindrance to them. But our influence is falling every single day because we are allowing the world into our lives more than we are allowing Christ into our daily lives. How is the Illuminati getting rid of religion? By discrediting the priesthood and replacing faith in God with scientific theories. Why? So that people would be guided by the Illuminati and not by God. The abolition of the family is the sixth part of the Illuminati seven-part plan. Here's what they have to say on it. We shall destroy among the chattel the importance of the family and its educational value. That's the one and only one I chose. By destroying the importance of the family unit and the value of it, the Illuminati will be able to replace the family unit with loyalty to their state. You see, how many of you recall, and I've always used this as the prime example. I don't think I've ever seen anything more horrific than this. Do you remember when that darling lady, Hillary Clinton, came up with her so-called catchphrase, "It takes a village"? It takes a village to raise one child. Her theory behind this was, well, look at those tribal people in Africa. All the people of the village watch over the kids and they teach them everything they need to know. Guess what? Hillary, this is not Africa. This is America. Let's get that one straight to begin with. Second, no, it does not take an entire village to raise one child. That's just your way of trying to get people to accept the government's interference into parental rights in the way parents have the right to raise their children. Whether they want to raise them as Christians or not, it is not your business. In short, Hillary, keep your nose out of the parents' abilities. Let the parents raise the children as God has dictated them, and just stay out of everyone's way. You've already made enough of a mess in the government and other things. We don't need you, through the Illuminati, to mess up the family now. Now, the seventh and last part of the Illuminati's plans, as dictated by Adam Weishaupt himself, calls for the creation of a new world order. We shall make law, right, and justice in the guise of proposals to the legislative cause, by decrees of the President under the guise of general regulations, of orders of the Senate, and of resolutions of the State Council in the guise of ministerial orders, and in case of a suitable occasion should arise in the form of a revolution in the state. The recognition of our despot may also come before the destruction of the Constitution. The moment for this recognition will come when the people, utterly wearied by the irregularities and incompetence, a matter which we shall arrange for, of their rulers, and I must add, our presidents, will clamor. Away with them and give us one king over all the earth who will unite and annihilate the causes of discords, frontiers, nationalities, religions, state debts, who will give us peace and quiet which we cannot find under our rulers and representatives. they clearly point out all these people that are being set up in government are purposely being put there so that they will destroy everything we hold sacred. We will be so tired of it that we are going to literally accept, as I've always stated, peace at any price. Useless changes of forms of government to which we instigated the chattel when we were undermining their state structure will have so wearied the people by that time that they will prefer to suffer anything under us rather than run the risk of enduring again all the agitations and miseries they have gone through. It is only with a despotic ruler that plans can be elaborated extensively and clearly in such a way as to distribute the whole properly among the several parts of the machinery of the state. From this, the conclusion is inevitable, that a satisfactory form of government for any country is one that concentrates in the hands of one responsible person. Without an absolute despotism, there can be no existence for civilization which is carried on not by the masses but by their guides, whoever that person may be. When the hour strikes for our sovereign Lord of all the world to be crowned, it is these same hands which will sweep away everything that might be a hindrance thereto. We shall so wear down the chattel that they will be compelled to offer us international power of a nature that by its position will enable us without any violence gradually to absorb all the state forces of the world and to form a super government. In place of the rulers of today, we shall set up a bogey which will be called the super government administration. Its hands will reach out in all directions like nippers, and its organization will be of such colossal dimensions that it cannot fail to subdue all the nations of the world. But we will not give them peace until they openly acknowledge our international super government and with submissiveness. And our kingdom will be distinguished by a despotism of such magnificent proportions as to be at any moment and in every place in a position to wipe out any chattel who opposes by deed or word. The administrators, whom we shall choose from among the public with strict regard to their capacities for servile obedience, will not be persons trained in the arts of government, and will therefore easily become pawns in our game in the hands of men of learning and genius, who will be their advisors, specialists bred and reared from early childhood to rule the affairs of the whole world. In this difference in capacity for thought between the chattel and ourselves may be clearly discerned the seal of our position on the chosen people and of our higher quality of humanness. I always loved the ending of this last one. Do you know the Illuminati is doing all these things, creating their new world order, because they have a higher quality of humanness? Well, I think I'm supposed to thank them for all this at this point, but no, I'm not feeling that warm and fuzzy moment that they expect me to. Adam Weishaupt had stated in the 7th part of his 7-part plans for global conquest that they were going to create a new world order. How? Through global revolution, peace by force, and peace at any price. And the reason why, because they have a higher quality of humanness. I think it becomes more than obvious by now that as far as the way history has been propelled up to this point, that the protocols have been very accurate. There is absolutely no way, as far as I see it, that any sane person could possibly believe, especially what we've just covered, that the protocols could be some type of Jewish Zionist conspiracy. That's absolute lunacy. Now what we're going to do, we're going to get into the political agenda of the Illuminati. We're going to examine this through the protocols and see what the end result of their rulership is going to be all about. Once the Illuminati have taken over the earth, literally speaking, and it's been prophesied in the scriptures, and they've set up their new world order, they're going to have to set up a ruling kingdom. In other words, they've got to have a plan to take over the nation and how they're going to govern it. And this is what we're going to look at next. The first thing that they're going to have to do is obviously set up a king, someone who's going to rule the entire earth. Now, again, as I said before, we're just going to use the protocols. And the reason I'm just using the protocols right now is to prove, among other things, that this does not represent a Zionist conspiracy. There's no way it could. Because, as we've already stated, the Jewish people are not in a position by temporal power or by godly power to be able to do this. Remember, God let them have it because they were in disobedience to Him. Just like God will still let you or I have it if we step out of line. Here's what they say about their king. The Supreme Lord, who will replace all now existing rulers, dragging on their existence among societies demoralized by us, societies that have denied even the authority of God, from whose midst breaks out on all sides the fire of anarchy, must first of all proceed to quench this all-devouring flame. Therefore, he will be obliged to kill off those existing societies, though he should drench them with his own blood, that he may resurrect them again in the form of regularly organized troops fighting consciously with every kind of infection that may cover the body of the state with sores. This chosen one of God is chosen from above to demolish the senseless forces moved by instinct and not reason, by brightness and not humanness. By want and envy and hatred which it engenders, we shall move the mobs, and with our hands we shall wipe out all those who hinder us on our way. When the hour strikes for our sovereign Lord of all the world to be crowned, it is these same hands which will sweep away everything that might be a hindrance thereto. Now listen carefully to this one. It is only with a despotic ruler that plans can be elaborated extensively and clearly. Without an absolute despotism, there can be no existence for civilization, which is carried on not by the masses, but by their guide, whosoever that person may be. Ever since that time, we have been leading the peoples from one disenchantment to another, so that in the end they should turn also from us in favor of that king of the despots, whom we are preparing for the world. The recognition of our despot may also come before the destruction of the Constitution. Now see, part one, or I should say step one. They've got their king. Now they need a kingdom. Here is what they have to say on that. It is this which has served as a basis for our organization of secret masonry, which is not known to, and aims which are not even so much as suspected by these chattel, attracted by us into the show army of Masonic lodges in order to throw dust in the eyes of their fellows. Today, I may tell you that our goal is now only a few steps off. There remains a small space to cross, and the whole long path we have trodden is ready now to close its cycle of the symbolic snake by which we symbolize our people. When this ring closes, all the states of Europe will be locked in its coil as in a powerful vice. Our right lies in force. The word right is an abstract thought and proved by nothing. The word means no more than give me what I want in order that thereby I may have a proof that I am stronger than you. Our power in the present tolerant conditions of all forms of power will be more invincible than any other because it will remain invisible until the moment when it has gained such strength that no cunning can any longer undermine it. For us, there are no checks to limit the range of activities. Our supergovernment subsists in extra-legal conditions which are described in the accepted terminology by the energetic and forcible word dictatorship. By all these means, we shall so wear down the chattel that they will be compelled to offer us international power of a nature that by its position will enable us without any violence gradually to absorb all the state forces of the world and to form a super government. In place of the rulers of today, we shall set up a bogey which we will call the super government administration. What form of administrative rule can be given to communities in which corruption has penetrated everywhere? Communities where riches are attained only by the clever, surprise tactics of semi-swindling tricks, where looseness reigns, where morality is maintained by penal measures and harsh laws, but not by voluntarily accepted principles, where the feelings towards faith and country are obliterated by cosmopolitan convictions. What form of rule is to be given to these communities if not that despotism which I subscribe to you later? We shall create an intensified centralization of government in order to grip in our hands all the forces of the community. We shall regulate mechanically all the actions of the political life of our subjects by new laws. These laws will withdraw one by one all the indulgences and liberties which have been permitted by the chattel. When we come into our kingdom, it is undesirable for us that there should exist any other religion than ours. The aristocracy of the chattel as a political force is dead. We need not take it into account, but as landed proprietors, they can still be harmful to us from the fact that they are self-sufficing in the resources upon which they live. It is essential, therefore, for us, at whatever cost, to deprive them of their land. So you see, when they set up their kingdom, they're going to make sure they're placed in a position to where you don't have your land, you have no means of sufficiency other than falling upon the good graces of the Illuminati and doing exactly what they tell you to. Now, the third part of the, the third step, if you're going to set up a kingdom as the Illuminati is, that you have to have a seat of power. You have to have some place where you're going to rule from. And as you've already found out on DVD 1, which is called The Arrival of the Antichrist, that place in the United States is going to be Washington, D.C. itself. If you remember, we already proved that Washington, D.C., and so much of it is laid out in a 666 pattern. Now, you have to have a constitution. The fourth step. In other words, you have to have something by which you're guiding and ruling the people over. Something that will say, this is a do, this is a don't. And here is some of what the protocols have to say on that subject. Liberalism produced constitutional scales, which took the place of what was the only safeguard of the chattel, namely despotism, and a constitution, as you well know, it's nothing else but a scroll of discords, misunderstandings, quarrels, disagreements, fruitless party agitation, party whims, in a word, a school of everything that served to destroy the personality of states' activities. By such measures, we shall obtain the power of destroying little by little, step by step, all that at the outset, when we enter on our rights, we are compelled to introduce into the constitution scale, into the constitutions of states to prepare for the transition to an imperceptible abolition of every kind of constitution. And then the time is come to turn every form of government into our despotism. So you see, the Constitution has been constantly under attack ever since Ross Perot was running for president. I haven't seen anyone quite like Ross Perot, who was so against our present Constitution and wanted it destroyed and something else placed within. But then again, this is what the protocols have been calling for all along. They already have the new Constitution ready. It's just a matter of when are they going to implement it. That's it. Now, they have to have a council. If you're going to set up any type of kingdom, a ruling body, something that is going to, that the king of the despot is going to act through. Here's what the protocols have to say on this. This one's a little bit lengthy, but I think you'll find this one very interesting. Reared on analysis, observation, on delicacies of fine calculation, in this species of skill we have no rivals, any more than we have either in the drawing up of plans of political actions in solidarity. In this respect, the Jesuits alone might have compared with us, but we have contrived to discredit them in the eyes of the unthinking mob as an overt organization, while we ourselves all the while have kept our secret organization in the shade. However, it is probably all the same to the world who is its sovereign lord, whether the head of Catholicism or our despot of the blood of Zion. But to us, the chosen people, it is very far from being a matter of indifference. For a time, perhaps, we might be successfully dealt with by a coalition of the chattel of all the world. But from this danger we are secured by the discord existing among them, whose roots are so deeply seated that they can never now be plucked up. We have set one against another the personal and national reckonings of the chattel religious and race hatreds, which we have fostered into a huge growth in the course of the past 20 centuries. This is the reason why there is not one state which would anywhere receive support if it were to raise its arm, for every one of them must bear in mind that any agreement against us would be unprofitable to itself. We are too strong. There is no evading our power. Besides this, we shall, with the introduction of the new Republican Constitution, take away the chamber the right of interpolation of government measures on the pretext of preserving political secrecy, and further, we shall by the new Constitution reduce the number of representatives to a minimum, thereby proportionately reducing political passions and the passion for politics. If, however, there should, which is hardly to be expected, burst into flame even in this minimum, we shall nullify them by a stirring appeal and a reference to the majority of the whole people. Upon the President will depend the appointment of Presidents and Vice Presidents of the Chamber and the Senate. Instead of constant sessions of Parliaments, we shall reduce their sittings to a few months. Moreover, the President, as Chief of the Executive Power, will have the right to summon and dissolve Parliament, and in the latter case, to prolong the time for the appointment of a new parliamentary assembly. But in order to No, but in order that the consequences of all these acts, which in substance are illegal, should not prematurely, for our plans, fall upon the responsibility established by us of the President, we shall instigate ministers and other officials of a higher administration about the President to evade his dispositions by taking measures of their own, for doing which they will be made the scapegoats in his place. This part we especially recommend to be given to be played by the Senate and the Council of State and the Council of Ministers, but not to an individual official. The President will, at our discretion, interpret the sense of such of the existing laws as admit of various interpretations. He will further annul them when we indicate to him the necessity to do so. Besides this, he will have the right to propose temporary laws and even new departures in the government constitutional working, the pretext for the one and the other being the requirements for the supreme welfare of the state. So you see, it becomes very apparent that the Illuminati have already established means by which they will take over a nation. And these were just some of the examples that I found when I was just reading through the protocols. There's a lot more. But for the sake of time constraints, I've had to limit a lot of the material I would have presented today. Unfortunately, as I said, I just don't have all the time I wish I could have had. But I believe I've given more than enough of a firm foundation which will clearly prove to anyone, including a so-called intellectual or some sort of hack journalist, or all these false prophets and apostles, that the protocols are definitely those of the Illuminati. There is nothing anti-Semitic. There is nothing that represents some sort of Jewish Zionist conspiracy. These are just the minutes of the meetings of the organization of the Illuminati that had been gathered together, that had been stolen by a child lady who was working for a Masonic family and who had turned them over to a Russian priest who eventually had them published and which were eventually republished and retranslated by an Englishman known as Victor Marsden. The plans for the Illuminati included 3 world wars, and the protocols verify them. History records the French Revolution, the Great Revolution of 1917 in Russia, which the Illuminati's protocols not only spoke about, but to which they own up to being the causative factors to them. I think by now it becomes quite obvious, ladies and gentlemen, that we're looking at a very rare find known as the protocols, because they are the Illuminati. They give us a light into the Illuminati's world, their activities, their politics, and their religious perspectives. In the next DVD, we are going to be, in a sense, going further with the protocols, because we're going to be picking it up in the prophecies. And by the prophecies I mean we're going to be sticking mainly to the book of Revelation, and we're going to see if the plans of the Illuminati, if their activities are lining up with the prophecies as found in the book of Revelation, Matthew, Daniel, and other places in the Bible. I believe you will find this to be one of the most revealing DVDs you have ever seen when it comes to the Illuminati and their future plans. At this point, I pray, ladies and gentlemen, I genuinely pray that you take a good look at the original writings of the protocols. Look at all this information for yourself. I know it is a lot to go by, ladies and gentlemen, but that's what this series is all about. No ministry has ever, in all of recorded history, put together a series based on the Illuminati, their activities, their politics, their money, their religion and how they line up with biblical prophecies. No one's ever done this. And it is through cutting-edge ministries, ladies and gentlemen, that this is being done. And it is cutting-edge ministry, along with myself, that is so concerned about the welfare of Christianity and those people who aren't saved, that all this was done. We have got to get the truth out there while we still have time. So it is quite obvious by now that the Protocols is actually a false flag operation done by the Illuminati to use the Jewish people as a scapegoat. And this is the constant method that the Illuminati have always used. I should know. I was in it. I remember when I've seen them use so many false flag operations. It would completely take your attention off the truth and put it elsewhere. It's so obvious, ladies and gentlemen, once we sit down and go through all this material, and I could have gone through so much more. I had a lot more planned, but I just didn't have the time. But it becomes obvious just by what we've gone through so far that the Protocols are not Jewish in origin, they are not anti-Semitic, and they do not represent some sort of Zionist conspiracy. They do, however, represent an Illuminati covert conspiracy that has been going on ever since the days of Adam Weishaupt himself. What we need to do, ladies and gentlemen, is take individually a good look at all the evidence, go through it step by step, and I think the end conclusion is inevitable, especially when we consider that the Illuminati's documents are coded. We need to understand what is really going on here, ladies and gentlemen, because I don't think we have much more time. And if we go and add that, in accordance to the scriptures, the prophecies that I've seen fulfilled in my lifetime, I don't think we have much more time left. I think what we need to do is to be about our Father's business, learn as much as we can, and speak the truth so people can hear the truth for what it is, and as a result get saved. In conclusion, let me just say to all those Jewish people I love dearly to this very day, Shelu Shalom Yerushalayim, and to my brothers and sisters, I urgently say, fulfill the Great Commission. Go ye out there and make ye believers of all men. Once again, thank you very much for joining me here in this DVD, and I look forward to speaking with all of you once again on our next DVD, number 6 in this series, which is called The Illuminati is Fulfilling Biblical Prophecy.